Okay, thank you everybody for joining, and thank you for the opportunity for this. I hope it's going to be beneficial for everybody. Um, Today, we're going to just give a little bit of an introduction of what branding is. People, I find, are very confused of what branding is. And honestly, a couple of years ago, before I got into this whole world of branding, I was also confused about what branding was. I used to think branding was design, and I used to think branding was about seeing something a couple of times and therefore you remember it. That's what I thought branding was. And as my digital marketing firm moved more and more towards having to provide more value for people, and Google and everybody wanted more authentic marketing engagement, we discovered that a lot of our clients didn't have what to work with. And because of that, we felt that there was something missing in the world that we had to figure out how to solve. And we built this branding business called Brand Hero. And the point was to try to take our clients and take future clients and get them to the point where we feel like we could then go and market them and they'll be effective. And I want to share with everybody today a little bit about what branding is. So if we hit just the basics of what branding is, people are confused a lot about between branding and marketing, what the difference is. So branding is really about what your message is, and marketing is more about getting that message out to people. So if you're just going to do marketing or advertising, but you're never taking the time to understand what your message should be or what's going to work best based on your audience, then you're skipping a step. And therefore, that might explain why you're not being as effective as you want to be in your marketing or advertising, because you don't have a strategic plan of what you want people to know about you that's going to attract more business to you. So simply, if I had to sum it up, it would be branding is what expectation are you setting for the public? And then how do you go about fulfilling it? And if you do a good job priming and explaining that through your advertising and marketing, you'll attract the right type of people to your business. And though those that you don't want will get the hint and realize that you're not for them, which is a great thing in business. You really want to try to attract the people that are going to appreciate the way you do things. And it's okay if the people who don't appreciate the way you do it go somewhere else. Abercrombie and Fitch stopped making plus size clothing and the world went nuts. How dare they? But their sales actually went up because the people that appreciated that actually bought more. And that's what you're really trying to do. You're trying to move away from being a commodity and more about aligning yourself with a segment of the population that you want to serve and say, I'll leave the other segments of the population to my competitors. So a lot of people make the mistake in thinking that branding is design. And the reason why is because here's a branding project that we did. And the manifestation of branding that often people get to see is the design part, right? So there's a big stark difference between the before and after. And a lot of it is design oriented and a lot of it is text oriented. And people think that that's the deliverable as opposed to the strategy and the things that went into planning of what you want it to design look like and what you want the text to be and what you want to portray and how you want to position the brand. And this is a really important part to really understand that branding requires a brand discovery where you're trying to figure out what you want the public to recognize about your brand. What expectation are you setting that you're going to have to fulfill? And then making sure that the public is aware of that they're actually seeing you in that way. And if you look at it that way, then the foundation of it is really getting down your USP, which is your unique selling proposition, which is simply what makes you different than everybody else. What is the areas that you've chosen to invest in your business? And I call them disproportionate investments, because often the regular stuff, the things from a business perspective that you should have, everybody has, right? So the fact that you have a secretary that answers the phone when people call, I know that in some businesses that's a shocker that people actually answer the phone, but it should be a given in most businesses. But the businesses that choose to invest where others in their industry aren't are ones that are choosing that, listen, we could get away with not having somebody answer the phone and we'll call them back. Or we could spend a little bit extra and have them answer the phone and make people feel like they're a priority and important. That becomes a disproportionate investment. That becomes something that you have that's a strength of yours that your competitors don't have. So examples of that are, let's say, people who outsource customer service to India and versus you keeping it in-house. Or Costco having a return policy that'll take back your phone 4 years later. For us, when I was looking to buy a vacuum and I was looking to buy a Dyson vacuum cleaner, I spent an extra $50 at Costco for that vacuum cleaner because I knew that if it breaks, I'll just return it 3 years later. And that peace of mind made me buy from them over somebody else. And that became for them a disproportionate investment. And if you think about it, that bother of taking back returns and dealing with the manufacturers and making it work doesn't make sense for businesses to have. That's why most businesses don't have it. But because Costco wanted to make that an important part of their brand, it became part of their marketing. It became a part about their brand. And then they had budget for it from other areas of the company because that became something that they were going to use for marketing or other things. And now that makes sense. So I hope that was clear. Then you have your brand promise, which is once you understand how you're different, you take responsibility for something in the market, and that becomes a promise where even if you're not able to fulfill on it today, and you might mess up 20% of the time, you could actually still make that a promise. Why? Because let's say I decide today that I'm going to say that I'm Zoom, and I'm going to make sure that nobody has security problems, and that's going to be my promise. The fact that right now there's so many security problems, you would say it would be a reason why I shouldn't make it a promise. But it really comes down to how you take responsibility for the problem. Let's say I make it my promise that I'm going to make sure that there is no security problems. When there is a security problem, how do I deal with it? Do I come out and say, well, listen, I gave it to you for free. You can't have so many problems. Can't have so many tainas on me. We're doing the best we can. It's not my fault. Or I could say, you're right for feeling that you should have had better security. And you know what? Our security was built based on the past projection of what we thought the volume was going to be and the problems that we saw. Now they're having a crazy amount of volume. We're committed to getting our team to make sure we solve these problems as quickly as possible. And we take responsibility for the problem. And we ask that you bear with us through this time. You see the difference in the way it was handled? The first way took no responsibility and made people feel like this is not something that you're really serious about. That's not something that you're committed to. And I have no expectations of how quickly you're going to solve this. The second one, where you actually took responsibility, makes me feel like you took this seriously. And what your brand identity was when your brand said that they were going to make a promise that they were going to keep your streaming safe, they actually took seriously as much as they're now taking responsibility for something that was beyond their control. They didn't know that COVID-19 was going to cause this and a new set of problems were going to come, but they're taking responsibility for it and they're dedicating resources to solving it. And that's really the promise part. And then you have a brand personality we'll get to a little bit later, but really it's about how every brand has a different way of doing business based on their personality and making sure that you own that and you make sure that everybody in your company has that same culture to express that personality the same way. And then you have positioning, which I believe is probably the most important part of branding, where it's really the part that you decide the world needs to know that if they knew this or they saw me in this way, they would come to me over their competitors. And that's that one clarified statement that recognizes everything that goes into your brand discovery. That's that piece that you want to share with the world. And then there's your culture, which I used to think was hogwash. Like culture was just silly. And I don't know why people spend so much money on it. But as I was going through this discovery more and more and learning more and more about this, I recognize that it's really, really a very important part, but not so much expressed for the businesses that don't need to rely on it. And I'll get to it a little bit later and discuss who needs to rely on it and who doesn't. But it's really just simply about the culture of the business and the processes and the ways that they decide to reinforce different messages versus other messages within their company that get expressed throughout the company. So I know that was a confusing statement, but to dumb it down, when you're calling into a customer service rep for a company and you have a problem, let's say you're selling Chinese food and somebody made a mistake on your order, and you call in and you say, listen, you didn't send me the General Chow's, you sent me the sweet and sour chicken. How should the person on the other end solve that problem? That becomes a cultural question. There's many ways that they could do that, right? They could say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm getting in the car now and I'm bringing over the replacement. They could say, oh, I'm sorry that it happened. Next time you come in, let us know and we'll make sure we do a better job. They could say, oh, I'm sorry, I'm refunding your whole order. They could say, oh, we have a credit on your file. Next time you come in, we're going to give you a free egg roll, right? There's different ways of dealing with it. Or they could say, hold on a second, I got to go ask my boss what I'm supposed to do. And then they come back and say, oh, my boss said you should do this. Whenever you have an employee who has to go ask the boss a question, that means that the culture is not set because they don't know. The employees don't know what's right and what's wrong. They have to go ask. And that means that you don't really have a defined culture that hasn't been planned out and thought out. And then you have a brand change, which is really about, if you didn't exist tomorrow, what would be missing in the world? What are you trying to change in the world? What is your mission? What are you trying to actually accomplish? And then your story, which is about what is your origin of where you come from and why you built the company that you're building. All these things are really important, have nothing to do with design. But once you have all these things, it impacts design in a very, very heavy way. And that's why it's really important. So let's go through them one by one and explain a little bit deeper what it is. Maybe I could try to give some examples. And if you have any questions along the way, please don't hesitate to ask. Just ask in the comments. Or if you're watching this recorded, feel free to reach out to me through social media or my email address at david@optimaltargeting, and I'm happy to answer your questions. So if you look at it from the positioning statement and how you position yourself, there are really two ways that I believe most companies approach branding. And the first way is probably the way that you've heard the most. It's first position branding. So it used to be where there wasn't a lot of competition. Branding was, how do I make enough noise, be in your face enough times so that you remember that I'm the person you think of when you're thinking of car insurance, right? So if I think of car insurance, think of Geico. Why? Because I've seen the lizard 100 million times, right? So that is the most expensive way of doing branding, and the big companies try to do that. They try to take first position. And the reason why they try to do that is because they're trying to swallow the whole market, right? They're not alienating any of the market. They're saying 100% of the market should come to me, and I'm going to try to take as much market share of the market as possible by spending 10 times as much as everybody else so that I get the biggest bite out of the market. The second type of branding is second position branding. And before I get into the second position, let's just talk about first position and drop more. So what you're really saying through your marketing is we have the most money, and therefore there's an association, we're probably the best. We're the most known, and therefore we're probably the best. When you think of our industry, think of us. We are the leaders in this industry, and they're the most creative, or they make the most noise, or they hire the most talent to make the most noise. And their goal of their marketing is that there comes with an association that if they could afford that level of marketing and branding and creativity, they must be doing really well. And they must be the best. And I want to use them, right? So that's the way of doing first position marketing. Second position marketing is a little bit like Avis versus Hertz. So Hertz was doing first position marketing. They claimed that we're the best. And they really had most of the market share. And Hertz came along, and they decided their positioning was going to be, we're number two, we try harder. And you could see some examples here on the screen of ads that they've done. Hertz has a competitor who says, I can't really read it because it's cut off. Let me go back a second. The whole thing was explaining that because we're number two, we need to try harder, and then showing how they try harder. And in the middle, you see Avis can't afford not to be nice because we're not number one. We're number two. We have to earn your business every single interaction because every person is important to growing the business. And it says, right, or not, give you a new car like a lively super torque Ford. Why? You're not the biggest in rent-a-cars. You have to try harder. We do. We're only number two, and therefore we have to try harder, right? So the whole positioning statement was that we're not the leader, but we try harder because of that. And what that is, if you have to simplify the second position, branding, is branding for that 20%. Branding on your strength, branding on your culture, on your personality, on something you have different than your competitor, and positioning yourself based on it. And that's really strong and really impactful. So this is a graph that we designed that really explains when you use different types of positioning statements in your market, right? So if you went into the middle represents low competition. So if you're in a space where there's not a lot of competition or no competition, you could make it about price. So that purple circle right there, making it about price is what most businesses do when they don't have a lot of competition. They say, they're $200, we're $150, come use us. So the reason why you should use us over your competitor is we're cheaper. And that's what people do when there's not a lot of competition. When there's medium amount of competition, they make it about their product, that we have a better mousetrap, we have a better product, or our product offering is better, or our service offering is better because we structure it in a different way, and they make it about the actual product. When there's a little bit more competition and you're dealing with where products are basically the same, there's not so much of a differentiation, you have to lean more on experience. So yes, you have to have a good price, but that's a given. And you have to have a good product, and that's a given. But the experience of the buying process becomes more important. So let's say Starbucks or certain retail places, the way you come in, the way you're treated, the environment, the whole experience of all the little things that make up the whole now become more important because they're talking more on an emotional level to things that you care about. And then the branding and positioning and marketing becomes more about experience because the product is given that they have coffee and it's good coffee. Everyone has good coffee. And that can't be the only sell. The differentiation in your product can't be the only sell. It becomes more about experience as well. And then if you go into more competitive, you need the price, you need the experience, you need the product, but you also need a story and a culture that differentiates you over somebody else. And we're going to talk a little bit about why that's important. So I often have this question when I speak to people and I ask them, why are you in business? What is your culture? What do you stand for? Why are you doing what you're doing? And especially smaller businesses who haven't really figured everything out yet, or have never been through a branding process, who never worked with a consultant who helped them through this process. They often answer me, I'm in business to make money. And the answer is that's not an acceptable answer. The world is it's not a communist state. It's not a socialistic environment. It's a capitalist environment. And capitalism says that just because you want to make money doesn't mean you should make money. You have to have the right to make money by providing value to society. So the question then becomes, is not I'm in business to make money, but what change are you actually bringing into the world that gives you the right to exist? What did you see broken that you're trying to fix? And if you could really own that statement and you could say, I really want to change the world, and I'm going to do it in this way because I believe my industry is broken or the world is broken, or I believe that the way I do it will provide value to people, then if you have a clear identity of what that is, you could attract workers who believe in that mission, who will work for you for less money, work for you with more passion, and get up every day and love what they do because they have purpose. And if you give people purpose, they will work harder and they feel fulfillment from what they do. They don't have to look for outside fulfillment, and you can keep your employees longer. And if you express that into the world, you will find that the world might join your journey and might join your mission because they believe in your mission, and they're going to use their dollars, their money, to vote for your company because they believe it deserves to grow and have a bigger impact on society. And if you see the biggest brands out there, they're having lofty ideas that they're trying to set in their branding and their marketing and their positioning, that they're hoping people join the journey with them. And that's really, really impactful. And you have businesses that take the time to make a customer map and a customer journey, which really explains from the moment a person wants my service to the moment they're done with it and they refer it or they don't refer it. Map out every single moment, every single touch point, every single interaction that happens, and make sure it's intentionally created in a way that gives over your differentiation, that gives over your culture, that gives over your personality, so that people can remember it and be wowed by you. I mean, this is an example of the Starbucks experience map, where they mapped out all the different things that go into the business and every interaction, from when you wait online to the smell in the air to everything that you have, and they infuse culture into everything. And then they replicated it in every single location, so that when you experience Starbucks, you have this expectation of what Starbucks means and stands for, and that's what branding is. So OXO, this is an example I love because they did such a good job with this. They have a company called Good Grips, and they make kitchen supplies with all rubberized grips. But I know if they decided to come out with a hammer, which I'm not sure if they have one or not, but I could imagine in my head that it will be black rubberized grip with ribbing on it. That will be the best grip possible, because I know that they've set that expectation for me, that all their things have that one element in it. That's a common theme through all their products that I know I can expect every single time, and that becomes an expectation. Apple does a really good job with that. If Apple came out with, I'm trying to think of something they actually haven't come out with, but if they came out with something, a car, I could imagine the design. I can imagine the usability. I can imagine the function. I could probably even imagine the price. That is because they have a really clear set expectation of what it is their brand stands for, and they replicate it in everything they do. And that's what we're looking to do. We're looking to do that in your business and in your brand, so that you could actually provide for people this sense of expectation. And the way we sometimes use that is through stories, and by personifying the things that your company are willing to do that others aren't, that is that disproportionate investment. And I love this video that I'm about to show you, that was actually presented to me by Moish Chapnik. He showed it to me, and I think it's a great example of culture and how stories of what your culture and what your business and what you represent and your brand identity have such a strong impact.
Xander reminds me a lot of me as a child. He has a very mechanical mind, and he likes to build things.
We started playing this game. We would always drive the Lamborghini Aventador, and eventually I said to my dad, "Hey, could we build one of those?"
We had no clue. Then I had the idea that maybe we could do 3D printings.
I thought he was crazy, to be completely honest. The biggest overwhelming response I get from people is, what? He's doing what?
We've had a lot of failures, but every time we put a part on the car, we were always just like, wow, we gotta finish this project.
It's been 1.5 years now. It's still in progress, but by the time it's finished, it's gonna be awesome.
I got a phone call from Lamborghini, and the idea was that they were going to swap a real Aventador for our project in the dead of night. I think I got it done.
what they are doing really nicely is telling a story. They are going through the process of actually showing people the emotional side of the process, showing that the love they had for his father and trying to tap into some personalities that transfer to their brand. We're going to get into that a little bit. So the first thing I just want to cover real quick is, I see time is short, is that if your advertising and your marketing isn't expressing what you're doing differently, and the easiest way to quantify that is if your ad fits your competitor, right? If you could take your logo off your ad, stick the logo of your competitor on your ad, and it still fits, then it's not a good ad if you're trying to do second position branding, because you're not expressing what makes you unique and different. And that's really part of it. And when you make ads, there's a lot that go into it. And there are ways of using design and art and logic and all sorts of things to bring out these ideas. And the last part, I just want to run through the rest of it because I know time is short. The brand personalities are really important. So when you're trying to establish a culture, you're trying to establish a reason why you do the things you do, words sometimes don't express it enough. People have mission statements and honesty, integrity. They end up being cliche and they don't mean anything. So you have to be able to express something in a universal language that people understand. And this is a universal language called archetypes that people naturally understand. If I can tell you, think of a mother. You already have an emotion tied to it, the way they treat people, the way they act, the selflessness, the devotion. Think of a nurse, especially in these times. You think about what they do for us. Think of a hero. Think of a rebel. We have so many cultural, pre-programmed identities in our heads of what we've experienced in this world through growing up in our society that we can now create for ourselves as a brand what we want to express. And what is our motivators? What is our process? What actually is it that we do? And then we take these ideas and we express them in culture. We express them in everything we do. And we express them in language. And we express them also in design. So the design part of branding comes in after you really figure out what your personality is, what you're trying to manifest, what you're trying to represent. And there's this, you can have the same business that does the same offering, but if one is doing it from a position of a pursuit of happiness and the other is doing it from an entertainment position, they manifest very differently. And if you look at Coke and Pepsi, that's really what it is, right? So Coke is innocence. They're trying to have the pursuit of happiness. That's why they have Share a Coke. And Pepsi is the pursuit of happiness, but not through innocence, but through entertainment. And that's why they use celebrities and they use pop culture and they use humor in everything they do, because they've identified they're going after the voice of a new generation. They're going after a younger demographic. And they decide they're going to take second position and go after the younger people. And Coke could have the first position, or they don't have a choice. They have to let Coke have that, where they're going to go after innocence and the holistic. But by going this direction, they actually succeeded in carving out a market share. And you have the origin story and what motivates you and your mission also give it over in a great way. And I'm just going to pull up this video because I thought it was a great example of that, of how they tied into emotion and their origin story from it.
For a place, a people, an idea, Marines fight to win. We make Marines who overpower the desire to quit with the perseverance to prevail. We develop quality citizens who keep our core, our country, and our communities side by side on the winning side. Not for glory, but for honor. For a code that isn't written or spoken, but lived. It's what we do. It's who we are. It's the battle cry of our fighting spirit. Battles won.
So the Marines did a really good job showing they're the warrior. They are honor. They have a fighting spirit. They're using video and imagery to give over that sense. but it's more than that. You could sense the emotion. You could actually sense what they're actually trying to evoke in you to get you to join their journey. And that's what good brands do. They invite you to join the journey that they're on. They have a mission, and they're inviting you to join their mission. And that's what you're looking to evoke when you do your branding. And the way you do that is understanding who your personas are, who is your audience, and then understand what the emotional pain they're going through and how what you offer fulfills that and gives them fulfillment. And there's something called a brand ladder that actually maps that whole process out, where you actually show what is the emotional pain of the person you're going after. So you could say, who is the target market? What emotional pain are they having? What is it that you offer that actually solves that emotional pain? And then technically, how does that actually carry out in the way you do it? And by understanding that, your sales process will be stronger and everything you do will be stronger. And people make a mistake in thinking that I'm not ready for branding because I don't have a budget for marketing. Branding does not require a budget for marketing. What it really is investing in yourself, in your business, and believing in yourself that you and in the special way that you put together your business have a place in this world, and you're going to make it. And by investing in yourself to make that clear, your sales approach, your ability to close deals will be better. Your marketing assets, where you be able to send somebody an email explaining what they just heard from you when you sold it to them over the phone, becomes better. And in this environment where there's less business to be had, it's so important that the business opportunities you get to the people are willing to talk to you, you close. And the way to do that is aligning what you do well with what they need. And the way to do that is to recognize your strength and speak to your strength. It is not okay if I meet you and you tell me I do credit card processing, or I sell cars, or I sell insurance, or I sell real estate, because I know 20 people who do that. I want to hear from you, like I heard from someone yesterday. I am a recruiter. I'm an HR headhunter, but I recruit based on culture. And when they said that to me, when I ever have a client that needs that, I will remember them. And I will say, you're the perfect fit for my client. And the other guy who told me they do recruiting, but they're 10% cheaper, I'm going to send them the business. The people who I know are too cheap to pay the real fees to who don't appreciate what it means to do culture and have the right employee and have the right fit and still need to learn a little bit more about what's out there. I'm going to send them to the person who's cheaper. And that's what branding is. Branding is giving the referral partners the equipment, giving your clients the equipment to know how to refer you when you're the right fit and when you're not the right fit. And then you could express that in anything you do and everything you do in a way that attracts people to you, attracts employees to join your journey, attracts people to vote for your business with money. And if you believe in yourself, then the process of branding should be invested in, because what you're really doing is you're investing in yourself and you're believing in your business, that if I have this one-time investment to make myself clearer on what I do, I will have a better return on my investment forever. And now is the time when things are slow, when people have time to think, to go through this process. You have the time. Invest in yourself. Follow what I outlined. Do it yourself, or contact someone like us who could do it for you, and let us help you, and let people like me. There's plenty of people out there who do it this way. Make sure you ask the right questions. Make sure you find the people who are willing to take this journey with you, to help you through this process. And the last thing I want to leave with is this process is not, and it should never be, somebody telling you what you are. The process should be somebody coaching you to discover what you are, to help you express what you are. You never want to have somebody impose on you something that they think will work well on the market if you're not willing to own that. And that's really the part that I think is really important that people have to know. And I hope this was helpful for all of you. I wanted to say more, but I was cut short a little bit about the timing. But I hope this was helpful for everybody. If anybody has any questions at this point, I'll take any questions. If not, you could contact me privately.